The Matildas game last night, did you have trouble getting home? Major delays plagued the network as fans tried to jump on a train. The T1, T2, T5, T7, T8, all affected. People were waiting for hours and describing the service as pathetic. According to Sydney Trains, an act of vandalism was to blame. They say cables at a railway box in Ashfield had been cut, and now police are questioning two men over it. Joining us on the line is Josh Murray, the new Secretary of Transport for New South Wales. Josh Murray, good morning.
Morning, Ben.
What went wrong?
Look, first of all, let me say that people have a right to be frustrated and angry about what happened. We are looking at this as a senseless act of vandalism. The system was broken into. It wasn't broken in itself. And it's one of the things that we absolutely have to do is build more resilience so that these things don't happen and people can have that commitment. Now, that's going to be a priority for me. What we're seeing out there now is an investigation from Sydney Trains and New South Wales Police. As you mentioned, some people are being looked at in regards to that. I don't want to cut across that live investigation this morning. But
okay, just explain to me. So what, you can turn up with some bolt cutters and bring Sydney's rail network to a standstill?
Well, that's exactly what we need to look at and find out if that's what's the case. Access was gained to a room. I've seen that room myself this morning. It's a brick single-storey dwelling about the size of a single garage, and someone's gained access to that and then set about going to work on the server racks that are in there. Now, as I say, I don't want to say too much because the police have fingerprinted that room. They were there at 1 o'clock this morning talking to the staff. And the engineering team was on site this morning. Jeff and Josh talked me through how that room works. And the way they compared it to would be like working from home and someone up the road from your house starts dismantling the NBN box at the end of your street. So it did bring the system down, but the crews were on site quickly. They used the available systems within that relay shed to get the network back up and running as quickly as possible. And then this morning, they've brought that all back online by working through the night.
Okay, just so I'm clear on motivation here, and we want to stress the people who are talking to police are innocent until proven otherwise, but is the suggestion, Josh Murray, that they were pinching something in there or just damaging it?
We don't know that yet, Ben. Certainly the racks, the server racks, have got a stack of modems in them and power supplies. They sit within this small room, and they were dismantled. And I've seen that this morning and spoken to Jeff and Josh, the electrical engineers out there this morning.
Okay, so you'll put stronger protections in place to protect those rooms?
Yeah, look, we have a security enhancement program that's underway now across the network, but I'll be asking the team today if this needs to be reordered and if sites like this need to be accelerated. We've got 11,000 CCTV points also across the network. Actually, CCTV was accessed by New South Wales Police overnight, which enabled them to take this forward very quickly at 1 a.m. But we need to know exactly how this room was accessed and what other measures we may need to put in place.
All right. Well, as you learn more throughout the day, you might be able to update us here on 2GB. You might even appear with my colleague Chris O'Keefe on Drive this afternoon. He's taken a real interest in your role that you've landed, Josh Murray, as you know, as the Secretary of Transport in New South Wales. How did you get the job?
Well, Ben, as strange as it may seem, I applied to an online advertisement that was issued by the New South Wales government. It was a public process. I put my hand up for that role, went through a number of stages of interviews, including by independent people that I admire that are in the infrastructure sector. As I've spent the last 15 years working in infrastructure delivery in this country and overseas, I prepared submissions. I went through psychometric testing, and I was interviewed by the Minister about a cultural fit with this organisation. After all of that, I was offered a role by the Premier's department, and it's a role that I'm incredibly proud to take on. I'm thrilled to be in this position. I'm, of course, disappointed that it's attracted so much attention over the last few weeks, but I expected that because of the importance of this role.
Okay, you say you've worked in infrastructure delivery. Have you got any operational experience?
Well, I've been at the absolute top of one of the world's largest privately owned construction delivery organisation, the business that is actually just handing over Central Station to Sydney Trains at the moment, the fantastic work that's been done there, as well as operational infrastructure delivery in Hong Kong, the UK, and right across this country. I've been involved in those projects. I've helped bid those projects. I've helped lead those projects. I've selected the engineering talent and leadership that has gone on to deliver those jobs, and I've been heavily connected to those in Australia and overseas for the last 15 years.
All right, but hands-on operational experience, I mean, how much have you got? Because one of the other people who could have got the job is Howard Collins. He's been in the industry for decades. Before working in Australia, he was at the London Underground for more than 3 decades. I'm not suggesting that you're suggesting this, but you don't think you've got more experience than Howard Collins, do you?
Ben, the job of the Transport Secretary is to coordinate a very large workforce, and that's something I have a lot of experience in, and making sure experts like Howard have the capacity and the capability they need to do their best work unrestricted. My job is to support frontline workers, like the ones I met this morning out at Ashfield, to be their best. We are very fortunate to have those people. They are the best in class, and they deserve a system, as do the passengers of Sydney and New South Wales, that backs them up at every point.
Okay, let me just jump in. Just keep the answers brief if you can for me, Josh, because I've got a lot of questions to get through. Just on operational experience, when the recruitment firm had a look at you, they said you, Josh Murray, were a significant risk because you were lacking operational experience.
Ben, I wasn't inside that process, but I know from reading the articles that it said that I didn't have strategic or people experience as well. And very clearly, that's exactly the job I've been doing with Lang O'Rourke for the last 15 years, a job that took me to London to help with that in the UK market and has brought me back to Sydney, where I'm pleased to be doing this job now.
Okay, so the recruitment agency was wrong because they said you don't have the operational experience. They also warned that you're not the right person for the job.
Look, I've got a few complaints about what this Melbourne recruitment firm did and said along the way, but I can assure your listeners I went through a very robust process that was run by the New South Wales Premier's Department and independent experts, and I sat through those sessions like everyone else.
Okay, joining us on the line, Josh Murray, the Secretary of Transport for New South Wales, and if you've been listening to Chris O'Keefe, you would have heard his coverage of this. The suggestion is, Josh Murray, that this was a job for a mate because you are dear, dear friends with the Transport Minister, Joe Haylen.
Well, Ben, that's not actually the case. I do know the Minister. I've met the Minister on a couple of occasions, including when she was Shadow Minister. We had a meeting earlier this year, which was well publicised at the time. In fact, it was a meeting that was held at Parliament House and properly registered, but it had nothing to do with this process. I can assure you this began when the job of Transport Secretary was advertised in the usual government requirements.
So when you had that meeting with Joe Haylen at Parliament House, this was not mentioned at all?
No. As a person who has been a former leader of a Transport Minister's office and has worked in the sector for the last 15 years, I spoke to Ms Haylen and her staff about what I had experienced the last time that I had been in those ministerial offices, how we had set up and how the transport system had been set up at that time. It was a getting to know you session shortly after the government had been elected. It was a brief meeting and it was publicly declared in the middle of Parliament House.
Did Joe Haylen or her Chief of Staff, Scott Gartrell, tell you about the job?
No, there was no job at that time, Ben. I went in to have a short meeting. And
so they didn't mention that there was a job going or they might have a job for you?
No.
There was no discussion of possible jobs for Josh Murray?
No.
And you didn't indicate that you were looking for one?
I wasn't looking for one, Ben.
Okay. So when the recruitment happens, you receive a phone call, as I understand, and you haven't told me this, I haven't spoken to you about it, but I'm just keen to find out whether this is true. I'm told that when the recruiters phoned you along the way, they were confused about what job you were actually applying for.
Well, your information is correct. I received a phone call from this recruitment company in Melbourne, and they told me that I wouldn't be proceeding with my application because I had no direct investigations experience. I ascertained that they thought that I was applying for the ICAC Commissioner role, which I accept. I'm probably not qualified for that role, and I won't be contesting the role of ICAC Commissioner.
So hang on, the recruiters thought that you were applying for the role as ICAC Commissioner, not Transport Secretary.
That's correct, and they also got my name wrong when they called me back. So I was concerned having worked in high-level executive recruitment around the world, that when data starts to be a little bit messy like this, I was concerned that I was in that process, because I knew that if I was successful down the track, we'd be having a conversation like this one.
Okay, you say you saw this job ad. Did you just spot it, or did someone send it to you?
It was publicly announced. I saw it, and other people also sent it to me because of my experience.
So you were looking for a job at that time?
I wasn't looking for a job, but I saw it, like many of your listeners would understand, when you're on portals like LinkedIn
Sure.
or other places, they come up. Yeah, and I did see it, and I read it because it was very interesting. And having been the Chief of Staff to a Transport Minister and the Chief of Staff to a Premier in this state, I was interested in a government job that I see as absolutely critical to better services.
Okay, those who sent you the job ad, anyone in government?
It was shared with me by a large number of people when it went live because of my experience in the transport sector.
Who in the New South Wales government sent the job ad to you?
I'm not going to go through that because it was a range of people, but I think some of that's been captured in the papers.
Was it anyone in the Minister's office or anyone in the Premier's office?
It was shared with me after it had gone public and everyone had access to it. So
Okay.
I can only assume that it was given to a number of people.
All right. There's no point in sending people to newspapers. You're on the radio right now. You may as well answer the question.
Sorry, not the newspapers. I mean these papers
Sure.
that have been tabled in
Who
the Parliament.
sent you the job ad from within the New South Wales government?
I received an update from the Chief of Staff saying that that job was live. And
The Chief
that
of
was
Staff
already
in Joe
something.
Halen's office?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And Joe then handpicked you, even though you weren't the top candidate according to the independent recruitment process?
I can't comment on that process. The work that we've done here, I've gone through all of those steps. When any recruitment process happens, we get to a point where people make a selection of who's going to go.
Well,
into
let me
that
ask you
role.
this then. Did Chris Minns share the job ad with you?
No.
No one representing Chris Minns?
No, absolutely not.
Did Chris Minns speak to you or a member of your family and let you know about the job?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. So it was the Chief of Staff in the Minister's office that sent it to you. You applied. The recruitment agency said this is not the right man for the job, but you got it anyway. Do you understand that spending $120,000 plus on a recruitment process and then ignoring the advice of the recruiters is a waste of taxpayers' money?
Let me stress that's a shortcut, because the recruitment process was run. I was in the shortlist, and then the independent panel interviewed me, excuse me, and recommendations were made as to then who would go forward to meet the minister and then be eventually interviewed by the Premier's department. That all happened as per the process, and a selection was made.
Josh Murray, you know the pressure's on you now. You better not stuff this up.
Ben, I'm here for a reason. I want to make better services for the people of New South Wales. It's something that's driven me before in my past. I look forward to getting on with the job here.
We wish you luck and look forward to talking to you in the role. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Ben.
Josh Murray. I would predict that Chris O'Keefe will have more to say on this afternoon. And look, I will repeat what I said earlier today, and I've said this before. I can understand why a minister would want to handpick someone for a role like this. Because if I'm running a big thing like that, I want to make sure that I've got people in a role like this who I know, who I've got some experience with, and who I've got some faith in. So I can understand that from Joe Halen's point of view. The problem is when you spend $120,000 of our money going through a recruitment process, which was clearly flawed. I mean, the recruiters were calling this bloke thinking that he was applying for a job at the ICAC. So the recruiters may have no clue. So if that's the case, why are we wasting $120,000 when we're going to ignore the advice in the end anyway?
If you've got a news tip, email ben@2gb.com.